Hi viewers, in this video I will show you how I disassembled my car instrument cluster and how I covered the gauge bezel with a cutout sheet of carbon fiber vinyl wrap.
4 months ago I ordered online a roll of carbon fiber vinyl wrap to cover the hood of my car. I watched a couple of YouTubes to learn how to do it, and even if I was able to complete the job with success, I found it very difficult to do this kind of job alone and without experience. When the job was finished, I kept some leftover cutouts. The next day, I decided to use one cutout to change the look of the instrument cluster. First, to remove the instrument cluster, I had to unscrew 2 screws located under the upper cluster section. When the 2 screws were removed, I pulled out the upper section to unfasten it. After, the connectors were disconnected. I kept the parts together to make it easier to reinstall them later on. 3 more screws had to be removed to unfasten the cluster assembly, 1 on each side and 1 on the upper bracket. I had to wiggle and pull the housing to make room to access the connectors. I disconnected the rest of them. And I removed the cluster assembly. I paid attention to the different shapes and colors of the connectors to avoid any installation mistakes. To work more easily, I continued the job on a working table in my house. First, the small knobs had to be removed. The one on the left was easy to remove, but the one on the right was firmly held. I had to pull hard to get it free. After that, I removed the upper bracket that was used to secure the assembly. The retaining housing hooks were still holding the white and the black sections together. As shown, I used a small flathead screwdriver to unhook the components while I was pulling them apart. Then it was easy to remove the bezel and use it as a template to make the carbon fiber vinyl applique. The next step was more complex than simply cutting around the bezel. I had to use a tracing paper and draw the guidelines to indicate where to cut the vinyl openings required for the small indicators. Note, the bezels for automatic transmissions and manual transmissions are different, but the cutting procedure is the same. When all the lines were traced, I taped the drawing sheet on the vinyl sheet that was on my cutting board. To ease the cutting of the half-round tracing, I simply used a punch. I completed the straight cuts with an X-Acto blade. When all the small openings and the guide cuts were completed, I cut the vinyl sheet and I kept some material around the edge to make it easier to handle. Using the guide cuts, I precisely positioned the vinyl over the bezel and I secured them together on the cutting board. To apply the vinyl on the bezel, I began by cutting and peeling off only 1/2 of the backing paper. While holding the right side of the vinyl sheet, I gently rubbed the vinyl sheet with my finger to bound it on the bezel. I paid attention to avoid making air pockets. The left side was easier to do because the vinyl was more stable. I trimmed around the edge to be able to remove and hold the bezel. To make the final cut around the bezel, I used a flat blade because it was better than using the small X-Acto blade. The result was very good, and I positioned the modified part over the gauges. The rest of the components were reassembled and the cluster assembly was ready to be reinstalled in the car. But before doing that, I still had another little task to do. I wanted to replace some regular cluster lights with new LED lights. Most of the lights were replaced. I secured the cluster assembly in place, and I took the time to check if all the LED lights were lighting properly. I was very satisfied with the new carbon fiber look. Not only did I like the look during the day, I also liked the LED glowing effect when it was dark.
I hope this presentation gave you some good ideas on how you could use different types of vinyl wrap to customize your cluster.